Guys, so this is what if Ben 10 was in Invincible Part 2, guys. And just to say, just to clarify, this is one of my favorite Invincible what ifs. After this, I'm gonna be uploading what if Shazam was in Invincible Part 4 or 5, I think. And after that, I'll get started on what if Deku had the mask. And I'm going to be continuing that. I might make the thumbnail better because the thumbnail on my commentary on that what if is kind of lacking, so I might re-edit that and post, everything later. But let's just get into it, guys. Basically, we start our story off last time on episode 2 and 1, where we saw Ben for the first time and how he was transformed, or how he wasn't transformed, how he was taken to the invincible world by a teleport or by alternate shenanigans, like how Ben gets into stuff like that in alternate universes and timelines and stuff like that. Basically, we see that Ben is teleported to the invincible world by, I think, a Celestial. Basically, or not a Celestial, but I think Alien X. And basically, as we see this, we see that basically, there's just a clarification. This Ben is the version of Omniverse Ben, just the version of Omniverse Ben after everything in Omniverse, plus Ben 10 Alien Force, since that is canon to Omniverse. So basically, yeah, everything, like all the experience, been built up over years and years, all the way to the climax of the original Ben 10, like in Omniverse. Basically, we see that, he has the same, experience, training, and everything that Ben had all the way up to the climax of the show of Omniverse, all the way up to the last episode. So yeah, basically, Ben still has the cockiness, but he still, is a hero, and he still thinks, clearly, and actually thinks things out. But let's just get into it. Episode 3, Invincible. Let's dive right into it, guys. And we get switched to basically the beginning of this episode is, the memorial or the funeral for the just the Justice Globe, or no, the Globe of Justice. I don't remember their name. Basically, the Justice League, from the Justice League equivalent of Invincible. Now, basically, we see that their memorial, the Guardians of the Globe, yeah, that's their name. The Guardians of the Globe's memorial, and basically we see that the episode plays out similar to the same, but actually Ben goes there since it was like a huge week time gap, and the funeral was going like really late, and on top of that, the whole entire events were postponed for a week because Ben had to, do the whole entire thing to build up his cred, and he became a pretty known hero. Not like, super famous, but a lot of people knew him in, like, where Mark was living, and in the city. So yeah. So basically, we see that Ben was at the memorial, basically in his Omniverse fit, basically just watching it all from afar, and him just, being there. He never knew the Guardians of the Globe, but he did see that they were very good heroes, and Ben, he wants to support all heroes, no matter what universe they come from. Basically, him, just being there to show his gratitude from keeping this world from not, dying or whatever. Because if you really think about it, Ben is the kind of the protector of the Omniverse, or of the universe. But basically, we see that pretty much Ben is there, and he pretty much sits through the memorial service, just like everybody else. Basically, the funeral happening when they bury their bodies, and basically Ben not being there since there was only few select people that were there, and Red Rush's wife fell down to the ground, pretty much in throbbing, just straight up grief at this event. Basically, Ben seeing something is off because he would be watching from afar, him being confused on how this could happen to the heroes, because he read up on them and he saw that they were very powerful heroes, like somebody incredibly strong had to do this. Into Ben's knowledge, since he did a lot of research and he did get some help, because some other heroes, like side heroes, kind of like heroes that are upbringing, and some very intelligent heroes, like Batman level intelligent heroes, were basically, had a lot of information on the hero and the villain society, in this world, basically asking and being friends with most of them, pretty much him asking, about, any type of villain that could do this to the, you know, Guardians of the Globe. Basically, he said that the only person strong enough on the planet, or maybe in the solar system, is Omni-Man. And basically that narrows it down to only Omni-Man, a few select others that most likely those villains were well marked down as dead because they were killed in an accident that they caused with their own hand, kind of like how Joker did, because he fell into the flood of acid. Basically, we see that pretty much, well, Ben sees this or hears this and basically is confused and actually already has a suspicion on Omni-Man, but just shrugs it off because he does know Omni-Man is kind of like the main, like straight up savior of this planet, and he doesn't want to be, an outsider on this planet or this universe and just, waltz in and take down their most beloved hero over nothing. But Ben doesn't know yet. Basically, as we see, pretty much Hellblood or Blood Hell, I don't know, remember his name, the Hellboy of this universe. Basically, he's at the funeral and he still has the same conversation and conflict with Omni-Man, alongside a robot and everybody else with robot with pretty much what was it, robot with, I don't remember his name, but pretty much, hold on, I gotta go back real quick. I gotta really think about this real quick. I think it was, I gotta go back real quick, guys. I think it was, nah, man, guys, I really, Cecil, yeah, that's his name. Cecil basically still has a conversation with the robot, and basically about, how, basically about Ben and Invincible, and also about the whole entire, thing about, the Guardians of the Globe. But basically, after that, he gets to pretty much Mark and his family going back after the memorial to their house, and Mark still has that conversation and conflict about the Guardians of the Globe dying with his father. Now, basically, as his father does this, we see that some news goes on about how Ben 10, basically the new hero on the block, has stopped another crime, a big time crime of a villain. Basically, Omni-Man just showing a little bit of, well, intensive, not anger, but more or less an obstacle in his eyes. Because Omni-Man sees that Ben is incredibly powerful because he can transform these alien species that, well, in this universe, that the Vulturemites have had conflict with. But basically, it's been wars with those aliens. Vulturemites have had wars with those alien species and have almost lost. But at the end, they brought up their strength and, defeated them, making them turn down to their side. But mostly, down in, like, not really big alien species like Ben transforms into every once in a while. Like, obscured alien species DNA that Ben hasn't, transformed into much of all. And Ben has tapped into at least, like, let's say 500 transformations. And plus, he does have a bunch of, like, 1,000 transformations. He has most of them, actually all of them unlocked, but he just doesn't have the time and effort to just go through all of them and to pick and choose. So basically, we see that Ben is still has his Omnitrix still, and the whole entire default measure of only 10 on the main roster. But basically, we get switched to pretty much, Debbie still has that, conversation with pretty much Omni-Man or Nolan, and we get switched to pretty much Mark calling up Amber. And basically, as this happens, makes a little bit of a date with her. And basically, we get switched back to pretty much a Teen Team's lair where we see Ben at, basically him playing ping pong himself, Accelerate style. And basically, we see that he sees, what was it? Eve walk in and doesn't really pay much attention to it. But after he, ping pongs a little bit longer, he sees Eve run out the way yelling. And basically, he flashes or like speeds into the restroom and seeing Rex with Duplicate. And he sees this. And, well, he knows what went on. And he's kind of disgusted. But not really, because, like, it's not really his business. But basically, Ben just gives Rex the most disappointing of looks ever. And just, runs off out of Teen Team's lair. Basically, Eve also leaving, but her still having that whole entire conversation, still exactly going the same, just Ben being there, and basically, Rex gets caught cheating, blah blah blah, stuff like that. Now, basically, after that, we see pretty much we get switched back to what was it? The pretty much I guess this version of the Hall of Justice, where we see pretty much a roster, like a big roster of heroes pretty much signing up and wanting to be a part of the new globe. The new Guardians of the Globe. Basically, Ben also wanting to sign up. Pretty much Ben signing up, and him seeing, and as Ben, sees, Mark talk to Robot. Mark sees this and basically walks over to Ben and tells him, what's up with you. They talk a little bit, and pretty much, they make jokes, blah blah blah. And actually, their friendship starts to actually blossom, and they become quite good friends. Basically, pretty much Mark, pretty much making friends with him, and basically him wanting to make a plan with Ben to, show him the ropes. Because when Mark sees him on the news, he sees that Ben must have some sort of experience, as he handles most of all of his crime fighting with the most intensively, good thought out plans. Basically, Mark wanted to learn some, you know, training in real life, because he already has training with his father, obviously, but he wants to learn about real life, not about heroism, or not about fighting and vulture might culture or whatever. He still wants to learn about those things, but he wants to learn about experience, stuff like that. He starts a conversation with Robot, and we see that the training starts to begin. Basically, Mark saying good luck to Ben. As they start, we see that strong dude or whatever, the guy that has some sort of stupid strength, and his head is unproportional with his body, but we don't really care. He goes up against Eve, and Eve folds him in an instant, and basically her dropping him. As we see, pretty much, what is it? Basically, Shrink Ray take on the monkey dude. We see that he's defeated pretty quickly, and basically, it's drawn down to. After that, we see that pretty much another hero, basically hero with some sort of wolf ability, pretty much goes up against Ben. Ben transforms into Ben Wolf and turns into a version of this Ben Wolf, basically a Ben Wolf in more of a better art style that you can see happening in an Invincible TV show. Basically transforms into Ben Wolf, and he gives the work to this off-brand werewolf hero, just punching him once and knocking him out cold. Now we see that he's on the last roster of heroes, with Monster Girl, Rexplode, and Shrink Ray, and Robot and all that other stuff. Basically, seeing that he still has that whole entire argument with Monster Girl, and basically been telling Rex to just let it go, and then she's just a little kid. Rex still has that altercation with her, and basically they still fight. And basically Rex gets punched out of the window, and Ben doesn't really care, but he's still he's still a good guy. He can he can forgive people, if you could say it. Basically he actually jumps into the fight before Markin, and basically Monster Girl starts to beat up Rex. As Rex spits out his teeth and throw them at Monster Girl, basically right before that, when Monster Girl was beating him up, Ben jumps in his Ben Wolf form, grabs Monster Girl and chucks her upside the ceiling, just throwing her upside the ceiling and her falling down to the ground, and him straight up just punching her down to the ground. Now basically he punches her a couple times, one or two, three times at full strength, knocking her into a crater and knocking her out. After that, she gets back up saying her sorry about almost killing Rex or whatever. And basically after that happens, we pretty much see that Rex gets up, just not really talking to Ben, just walking off. And basically, pretty much Ben tells him, just calm down. And Ben actually he makes a little bit of a friendship towards Rex, because, he wants to make as much friends as he can in this world, because he doesn't know what it's going to come down to. Because, the Alien X that told him about the whole entire thing, about sending him to this world, about how, he has to make this world better or whatever. Basically, Ben, need to know what he needs to do to save this world. But for that matter, we just skip over that. I will still situation happens. Pretty much Rex and the whole entire, tension between Eve actually comes out, and Eve does tell him about the cheating before before Mark flies after her. Mark talks to her still after, she flies off. Basically, Ben just telling Rex to just be better. Basically, walking past Rex, not really caring for him, being all beaten up, and just not wanting him to die. Basically, Ben, is walking off, and basically, he's not there for the whole entire situation, but basically, we see that Ben walks off, and we see that Ben actually does get an invitation, and actually is told, about him, he can join the Guardians of the Globe. And basically, Ben says, I'll, think. And basically, Robot, since he already has the main core, the main base of the Guardians of the Globe, he tells basically, what was it? He tells, sorry, guys. Sorry, he tells Robot, or Robot tells Ben that he'll make him a backup, or basically, somebody to call when, they really need it, like when the Guardians of the Globe are really getting their butts handed to them. Like it's like a planet level threat. Basically, well, Ben, well, accepts this offer of being a part-time member, and basically isn't there for the whole entire thing with, how Mark makes fun of the guy without powers, pretty much the guy without powers, aka Black Samson. And basically, he still talks about the stupid training schedule, and Robot still has that talking moment about, Monster Girl's powers, and about every time she uses her powers, she becomes younger. And if she does this whole entire training schedule every time, then and there, she's just gonna be like a baby. And basically, as we see this, we've given switch back to Mark and his friend talking about the whole entire date with Amber. And pretty much after that, you see that he still has a date with Amber, but he's called in by pretty much he's called in by what was it? Freak, I forgot his name. Cecil. And pretty much Ben is actually there because Cecil did get his information with Ben, and Ben is like a call up for him. So basically, Ben, Mark, and Eve go there to take down the villain, or the villain that's causing havoc there. Basically, let's just say, well, this guy. I don't even know his name. I don't even care for his name because he's just a mediocre villain that's not really gonna be playing a big part in the show. And basically, as we see Ben and the rest of them show up, Ben is on a hoverboard because Cecil did, Cecil did make a little bit of arrangements with Ben over the weeks, giving him a more modified, invincible version of his hoverboard, him flying alongside Mark and Eve. As this is happening, as you see the campers and everything about the, whole entire Mount Justice, I can't remember it. The Mount, I don't remember, God, bro, where the mountain with the president's face carved into it. I am not a big history goof, and I don't remember the name of it. Basically, we see that pretty much, Mark saves the day, grabbing the head of one of the founding presidents, putting it back on. But basically, after he does that, we see that the villain, that's kind of a hierarchy type of person, doesn't really like, America's whole entire shig and the, hierarchy of power. Pretty much as Ben and Eve are up high, pretty much looking at this, Ben flies past them, just going right in, because he still is impulsive. He flies right in, basically Mark telling him, what are you doing? And basically Ben says, just watch and learn, kid. Basically, they're nearly the same age. But Ben just, just hoverboards right towards the villain and transforms into one of his more profane transformations. One of his best. Would transform into feedback. And I think this is how feedback would look in the Invincible art style. But basically, we see that feedback shoots a huge wave of electricity straight towards the villain, pushing him back. But he uses his, gloves, or his pretty much energy gloves, and shoots a wave of, pretty much rock and a bunch of other stuff towards Ben. Ben dodges it, but he gets hit halfway and gets pushed out of the fight for a little bit. And basically, we see that the guy, the main villain, still has that conversation about the hierarchy of power, about Eve, and about her dress is very well revealing of sorts. Basically, they still have the same fight, and he still makes those huge tremors leading to lava underneath the, ground, and basically a family falls in. As this happens, Ben jumps in using his electricity to boost himself or propel himself forward. He grabs the family, saving them before, Mark jumps in. Now, as he's grabbing the family and getting them out the way or saving them, we see that the other villain jumps in, throwing a huge amount of rock towards Ben, hitting him and him losing grip of the family, basically him being pushed away. As we see this happen, Ben sees the family start to fall down, and Mark uses his whole torpedo move and flies down and saves the family. Basically, pretty much when the father falls down, Ben jumps down, saving the father as well, and Ben just saving the children and the mother. And basically, Mark just saving the children and the mother. Now, as the villain goes up against Eve, we see that, Ben comes out of absolutely nowhere and just grabs the villain and takes all the energy away from his cuffs or away from his gloves, basically, immobilizing him. As he takes the energy away, the energy, sparks out because it's some sort of unknown energy force in the gauntlets, and he's pushed back, but it also pushed back the villain, and the villain is pushed down near the lava area, and pretty much the villain falls down to the ground. As the villain is almost about to die when Eve catches him, the villain, pretty much he actually is almost pulled up and saved. But basically, as this happens, because the whole time, because his gloves aren't acting up, he doesn't die. Mark grabs him, but at the last second, Ben accidentally loses some grip off of the, He loses grip off of the goblets and drops them down pretty much, the crevices or the, pretty much leading to the lava, passing by Mark, pushing Mark away, and pushing the villain deeper into the lava and killing him still. Basically, that whole entire thing just being pointless. Just a little bit more minutes on my video. But basically, we see that Mark and Eve, see it through alongside Ben, and pretty much they succeed. Ben walking off, and pretty much Mark saying, I gotta go somewhere. Before he goes, he talks to Ben and gives him his number, saying, I want to be friends. And, blah, 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 talking about, we're both heroes. We're both, teenage heroes that are coming up, upbringing or whatever. And you've been around for a couple days. I've been around for a couple days, blah, blah, blah. Basically, Ben sees this and actually, sees Mark's a pretty good kid. Not a really good kid, but Mark's the same age as him, so it doesn't really see him as that. But basically, he sees him as a fellow hero that wants to do good, and and it's a rookie. So basically, he agrees to be friends with Mark and do some crime fighting thing, some sort of team up, if you could say. Now, basically, after Mark flies right back home, to spend time with Amber, he still had the conversation with Amber, and they still do share a kiss. We get switched to pretty much the kaiju, the dead kaiju, Mark's father or Omni-Man fought, and pretty much we see that Daniel pretty much is told by is told by the Cecil to pretty much pit the kaiju, since the kaiju is still alive a little bit, so to put the kaiju in some sort of facility. He might come in handy later. And basically, as we see Mark's father try to tell his wife, or give his wife the bits of the kaiju that was stuck in his cape to cook for dinner, they still have the same quirky moments. They still really good showing about their marriage and stuff. Basically, after that, it gets switched back to pretty much Rex trying to apologize to Eve about what he did. Basically, him apologizing. As she declines the apology, tells him that what she did was horrible, she flies off, basically not being mad, but just disappointed at Mark. Disappointed at Rex on what he's done. Now, as this happens, we basically get switched to a prison where pretty much the Merle twins are there. And at the prison of the Merle twins, it goes exactly the same. Pretty much it going exactly the same, and the Merle twins escaping, and pretty much after that, they escape. One of them die, but basically the other one just goes back to an area and basically reclones the other. Now, basically, we end off there with episode 3, a scene that pretty much um, the Hellboy, whatever, I don't remember his name, pretty much comes to, comes to Debbie's house and basically talks to her about and pretty much raises her suspicions or gives her a suspicion about, Nolan. And pretty much after that, we see that, it goes similar the same, her getting kind of a suspicion towards her husband. And after that, we get switched to episode 4, where Ben's going to play a little bit of a crucial part. After that, when we start off episode 4, we continue with our story, and we start off our story with none other than Ben. Basically, we see our friend, our boy, our legend, the GOAT, Ben10, basically after the events of, pretty much after the whole situation with, the exhibitionist at the beginning of the episode, with Mark flying over the desert area with his father, and after all that, we pretty much get switched to pretty much, the legend himself, Ben10, basically flying across, flying across pretty much, flying across the mountains, basically coming across Omni-Man and Invincible. Invincible says hi to Ben. Basically, Omni-Man saying, Ben10, new hero. Basically, he says, yeah, I know him. Pretty cool guy. And basically, after that, we pretty much get switched to pretty much Ben flying to pretty much his new house, because since of these saver deals and the merch he was getting off of his new, figures and lunch boxes, jackets, and even custom cars being made after him, and even some type of, low budget TV shows being made after him, he pretty much, let's just say, he straight up just, gets a whole good, a good penthouse that, is all good and stuff. And basically after that, we get switched back to pretty much Mark and Invincible. Mark and Nolan coming back home after a little day of training. After that, we see that Mark still goes on a date with Amber to that, thrift store, or thrift, was it, at that, area and everything. And basically, getting her that rice picker, or that rice cleaner, or whatever. As we get switched back to the Merle twins, as the Merle twin that survived restarts and starts to restart, the whole entire process of, pretty much, DNA and recloning himself. We see that, it works. Basically, him beginning the cloning process for his other half. After that, we get switched to pretty much the, base of the New Guardians of the Globe, and Ben is there. Because Ben is a half-time or part-time member, but still he's a member nonetheless. Basically, him coming there, him being introduced to the team. Basically, they know about him because he was at the internship, or at the, pretty much introduction. Basically, we see that Cecil shows up, pretty much saying hi to Ben, not really paying much attention. Him knowing that Ben is a very, new hero that he doesn't know anything about. Basically, him being kind of suspicious towards him. Because, why wouldn't you? Like, he's a hero that's been shown to transform into different aliens that possibly have the strength to take down the whole Guardians of the Globe. And Ben and Omni-Man are actually two runner-ups of the death or the murder of the Guardians of the Globe. But basically, after that, we see that Cecil talks to them about the blood state, about how when you guys finally think of yourselves as a real hero, so you can, wipe off the. If you think of yourselves as you surpassed and you became better than the original, and you think you became a good team, you can wipe this off. But until you earn it, that's what's important. Now, basically, as we get switched back to, pretty much, Mark and a little bit of moments that he had with Amber. Basically, in my it might be controversial, but I feel like Amber is kind of a jerk in the situation because, like, come on, let's be real. She knew that Mark was a hero, but expected him to tell her his identity after a couple of weeks of them dating. Like, come on, bro. Mark literally just became a hero. He can't just break the number one rule of becoming a hero, telling people their secret identities. Like, is you dumb? Like, and I feel like Amber's a jerk. Because people think, like, he should have told her his secret identity, blah, blah, blah. Bro, I would at least waited a good, like, year or a half to tell my girlfriend if I was a literal superhero. Like, let's be real, dude. If you got people, you got people that can literally kill thousands of people in one blow after you when you fought them. If they find out your secret identity because your girlfriend blapped your mouth off, basically your family's dead, bro. But basically, we see pretty much. Yeah, I feel like Amber's controversial. She ain't a bad person. I feel like her thinking is weird. But basically, we get switched back to Cecil at Debbie the Grayson's home. Basically, talk about the Mars expedition of pretty much NASA going to Mars, and they want Mark to see it through with Ben Tennyson. Basically, kind of a team up because Ben Tennyson is shown to have alien ties because he did have a little bit of interview because Cecil did have an interview with Ben. Basically, because Ben and Cecil do know each other because Cecil wanted to know more about Ben. Basically, we see that Mark goes up to the challenge, being a lot more enthusiastic about it because he wants to go to Mars. Plus, he wants to spend a little bit more time with Ben and know him, and basically get some pointers and become more of friends with him. Basically, after this, we see that Omni-Man sees this as a big no-no and actually goes way more against it. But Mark still wants to do it, and Omni-Man, respects that. And basically, as after that, we see that Mark, talks to Eve still. Basically, a scene that Mark runs into Ben after school. Basically, Ben just driving past the school in a car that he bought with his new advertised money, or his new advertised deal with money, stuff like, TV shows and stuff like that. Ben is getting a lot of revenue money because of the merch people are making off of him. And basically, we see that Ben pretty much, gets ready for the whole entire Mars expedition, and basically tells, Mark if you're ready or not. Mark tells his goodbyes and basically says that he's going out for like a school field trip or whatever to Amber, and basically flies off and pretty much gets ready to the expedition with Mars undercover. Basically flying up there with Ben transforming into Astrodactyl the fly right after him, and join him with his team. Now since Ben has to keep his their presence there a secret because it is like an undercover job to keep them safe because they're going to Mars. Basically, Ben has still the same space headset with the same pretty much breathing thing as Mark, but a whole like sleek spacesuit. Ben's spacesuit would look similar to this. Basically, it being able to transform or go away with his transformations, meaning that when he transformed back, it would be on his body like his clothes. So it would still, be there. So if he did detransform, he could still survive the harsh environments of of Mars with his suit. Basically, his suit being made of a high-tech fabric, way stronger than way stronger than the astronaut suits. Basically, it being a little bit more durable and a lot more sleeker and movable, and pretty much it being a little bit more of a green color scheme. All the gray on it would be a green or really, really dark green to a point where it looked like black. Basically, we could switch to the rest of the episode where we see Ben and Mark on the top of the shuttle. Basically, their helmets being connected so they can actually speak to each other in space. And basically, they would talk to each other after the whole entire situation of them and the entire Mars thing and them starting their journey to Mars. And basically, as they do this, they descend out of the solar system, making their way to Mars. As you see, Nolan's still talking about how this is kind of a bad idea and doesn't really go with it. He still has that slight conversation or argument or disagreement with Debbie, but still they work it out because their marriage is still is whole for now. As Mark tries to eat, we see that Mark holds his breath trying to eat in space, since he kind of does. He is able to withstand space, but when he takes out the sandwich to eat it, well, it kind of just turns into like a concrete type thing. As we get switched back to Earth, where Nolan and Debbie make up and they're going at our Paris, basically, spending a little bit of a dinner date with each other, or a little bit of dates with each other. Basically, we see that Mark and Ben, jump off from pretty much the team of astronauts. And basically, we see that pretty much Ben and Mark stay from afar. Mark talking to Ben, telling Ben, telling Ben, you're ready, you're cool. Basically, he starts to talk to Ben, small talk, and eventually asks Ben about how do you make it look so easy. Ben says it's not really easy. Well, it is for me, but for you, it might be new. I've been at this since I was 10 years old, and I'm at least like 15 now. Base, I'm a teenager just like you, and I've been at this for at least 10 years straight. And I gotta say, I've been at this for a very long time, and I've known, and I've done it so much to a point where it became kind of a second nature, and well, it's just easy for me. But pretty much telling Mark that, well, you're a good hero, Mark, and you've made your dent on, the hero society so far. And basically after that, we pretty much get switched to Mark and Ben just, waiting it out, just camping out. And as they're camping out, not them really looking at the team of astronauts, we pretty much see that there, and Ben is in like his space uniform. Basically, we see that they're just camping out. Ben having his phone out, him actually charging to the full percent instead of Mark not having it on. Basically, he's going through his past emails he had before he left. Basically, him going through them, blah blah. As is happening, we pretty much get switched to pretty much a scene that Marky Boy's phone dies, and pretty much gets up to check on the astronauts, and he sees that they're gone. Patting Ben or pushing Ben on the arm, telling him to look at this. Ben looks and says that, where did they go? Basically, Mark flies up and flies back down, saying that they left, footprints. Let's all of them. Basically, Ben following Mark after they fly off. We get switched back to Earth. The same thing happens with Debbie talking to Nolan, and eventually to their conversation. Whole entire hero thing happens, and pretty much, Ollie Man doesn't really care about the whole entire villain, and just keeps on asking Debbie, "Do you trust me?" She says yes, and basically, Nolan steps right into heroic business and takes on pretty much the dragon, or the villain. As we get switched back to the Grayson home, we see pretty much, Dark Blood. I think I remember saying, yeah, Dark Blood. Basically checking out the Nolan home. And as he's doing this, we see that he steps in, or steps across, or comes in counter with, Cecil and his men. Them being cloaked in the Grayson home. As after that, we get switched to pretty much Ben and Mark following after the footsteps. Ben not transforming yet, or has transformed, but not transforming again yet. Basically, him being confused, and what's going on. As this is happening, Ben says, got any transformation for this tracking? He says, yeah, but I'm pretty sure it won't really work on this planet. It's Mars. I don't really think I could really breathe in Mars's oxygen, since it doesn't really have oxygen. But yeah, basically you see that Mark starts to investigate, trying to figure out where did they go? Like the footprints just stop. And basically after this, we see that a huge gust of wind pretty much opens up a little bit of the crevices, and we see that Mark opens pretty much a latch on pretty much the floor, opening a secret compartment or some sort of opening. He opens it, and a bunch of these alien creatures jump onto Mark's face. Basically, Mark, pushing them off or pulling them off, and Ben just being out of the way. Now, basically, as Ben and Mark are walking side by side across this whole tire, weird crevices type thing, and so these brain type of face hugger type aliens just sliming around. We see after he starts to look around, he sees a diamond. He looks at it, and the diamond is shown to be a shape-shifting Martian. Now Ben and the rest of them see this, and Ben, immediately goes offensive and pretty much transforms into an alien, or tries to go for one, but he gets stopped by the aliens and gets cornered alongside Ben, and Ben does get Ben and the rest of them pretty much one of the Martians asks about how Mark can survive or can withstand the aliens touch, because alien did just fall. One of those slimy aliens fell on Mark's arm. Mark pretty much tells them it's not really, I don't know, it's just not, it didn't really hurt me. He explains that he's a Vultramite, and basically they take him to the Emperor, or the King, I would say, the leader of the Martians. Basically, as we see, pretty much Ben and Mark are there, and Mark does most of the talking, basically telling Ben, let's talk or something. Basically, Ben saying we're here for the astronauts, no, nothing less or nothing more. Basically, they say, we're here for the astronauts, and that was an undercover mission to keep them safe and blah blah blah. Most of the astronauts saying you didn't really do a good job, and basically, pretty much, as they're told by the Martians that we can't let them go because if one of them were infected by the alien, your planet could be in great danger alongside ours. Now, basically, pretty much after that, after Mark sees and says, I understand, and I understand both Mark and Ben saying that unitly, they immediately dash and run with they immediately dash and run with the astronauts. Basically, Ben transforming upgrade basically grabbing all of them, because upgrades are really flexible. He can stretch his body. He grabs all the astronauts at once, pretty much pulling them up, just dragging them, and starts to just sprint, him using his stretchy body to elongate his legs forwards, giving him him clearing a lot more ground, and him jumping right by right, basically pretty much marking the last minute, just grabbing Ben and making them all fly towards the docking bay, pretty much getting the astronauts back into the ship and telling them to get ready, and this can immediately start it. As the head astronaut tries to start the protocol of restarting the ship, basically just says forget it and just tries to start it, just straight up. Basically, we see that Ben still he still in upgrade form, and starts to shoot laser blast towards the enemy, towards the Martians that are tracking them down. And basically, as Mark, speed blitzes towards them, making a bunch of dust, pretty much knocking them off their game. Mark pretty much flies off with the ship, pushing it upwards so it can get a little bit more traction, blast off. Pretty much Ben grabbing or latching onto Mark's headset, or his pretty much his oxygen tank. Us seeing that Mark did come back to Mars after the space ship flew off, him grabbing a Mars rock for his girlfriend, a souvenir, and he flies off. After that, we get switched to pretty much Well, them leaving. Pretty much Mark D. Or was it Ben coming off of, well, or just detaching from none other than, Ben. Sorry, guys, I can't even talk right now. Ben detaching from Mark's pretty much oxygen tank. Mark saying you can do that with that transformation. Ben saying, yeah, it's a pretty cool, pretty handy. After that, we see that pretty much Mark and Ben are just on the top of the ship, and basically after we see that one of the crew members have some sort of differentiation with their flag, and we see that they shapeshifted. Us seeing shown that cruise ship, that person most likely is a Martian. And as we see that the real human that was left behind is infested with the alien swarm, basically it being used as a weapon well, against against the people, or against the Martians. After that, it gets switched to pretty much Mark flying back home, and Ben saying farewell to him, and him flying back to his penthouse in the city. Basically, Mark, before he goes, telling Ben, have a good night, and basically giving him a kind of a dab up, then becoming a little bit more close together friends, actually becoming like BFS, because on their way back to Earth, they talked and they shared ideals, common, like, what was it? Uh, they have a lot in common and stuff like that. They're just becoming really good friends, like straight up best friends. Now, basically, after Mark, dabs, or like straight up, just handshakes or hugs, what was it? Ben goodbye. Pretty much him walking off and telling Ben to see you later. Him walking into his house and him seeing his parents, well, their clothes, was it wrinkled up, and him just being disgusted, and him just walking to his room. The next day, he comes back to school and he, meets up with Amber, basically talking to her. As he gets switched off from there, we see that, Dark Blood does get banished still near the end of the episode by Cecil, and we get switched back to pretty much Debbie at the Grayson home, basically her cleaning up, all, vigorously. Basically her coming across, stuff in there, not the Grayson home, I mean, Red Rush's house. Basically, well, pretty much her cleaning up there. As we get switched back to Robot, we see that Robot isn't really Robot. Robot is is working for a type of human. Piece of human, I would say. Us getting shown the real Robot, the man behind Robot. Basically, after that, we get switched to pretty much how Dark Blood left his book in, Debbie Grayson's closet, basically it giving off coldness, and her grabbing it, and her not grabbing it, but her noticing it. Now after that, we get switched to pretty much, a scene, my boy Ben, before the episode ends, a scene Ben in his apartment, or in his penthouse, him looking on the view of the city, because his penthouse is pretty good. Pretty much he looks around, and he's in, like, the city. He's in the city, but he's like near, like, right between the bad and good of the city. And he looks around and he sees everything going on in the city. And he's more of a universal, villain. He stops universal threats, but still he was, a villain. He still is a hero. Like, he stops crimes, robberies, stuff like that. And pretty much we see that Ben looks around, and as he's doing this, you see that he's interrupted by something. And he looks up and he sees the Celestial, the alien X that sent him there. Ben tells him, why you sent me here? Basically, he says, it seems like you made a really good home for yourself here. Him teleporting instantly in front of Ben. Ben being set off by this. Ben falls back, and Ben is like, in the pants of his spacesuit, so he hasn't really changed out completely. Ben tells him, to get out of his penthouse, or before he does that, he says, why did you send me here? What was the reason? He says, I told you to save this world from its own falling. Save this world from murders unbelievable. You've already failed. I sent you too late to this world. You've already failed, and you've already let this world's greatest heroes die. I had to tell you, Ben10, you're a very good hero. You made a very good impact on this world. You just have to stay a very close eye on the boy of yellow. Ben being kind of confused, but before he can ask anything else, the celestial disappears instantly, not even leaving a puff of smoke, nothing, not even a swoosh noise, just gone. Basically, Ben is confused. And after that, it gets switched off at the end of the episode with the credits roll. Now, I'm going to leave it off here, guys, because I've done 2 episodes. Hope you guys enjoy the video. Hope you guys like and subscribe. As always, guys, have a blessed day. After this video, I'm going to start, the whole entire recording process. I'm going to be starting recording for What If Shazam Was an Invincible, Part 4 or 5. And I hope you guys enjoy the video. Hope you guys like and subscribe. And as always, guys, have a blessed day.